Welcome. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the continuation of the discussion on the Yoga Sutras. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. So if you have missed any of the previous discussions, you may find it on YouTube. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Please use the raise hand feature also in order to maintain the queue. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself in order to minimize the disturbances. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Good evening. Yogena chittasya padena vacham alam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakurutam pravramrinam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam katra sutrasya bhashyasya kramadvivaranasya cha. We were discussing a very important part of this text. I shall just give a brief introduction to the commentary by Vyasa on this very profound sutra, that is the 33rd sutra, Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshanam Sukha Dukha Punya Apunya Vishayanam Bhavanataha Chitta Prasada. That's the meaning here. How to acquire one-pointedness and tranquility of mind. This subject is very elaborately discussed in so many sutras, in the coming sutras also. From 33rd to 39th sutra, in every single sutra you find different practices are recommended. One unique feature of this part of the text is, on the one hand, there is a method recommended for the traditional theistic believers in God, the traditional followers of different faith systems, and also there are certain important methods recommended which are equally valid for those who are agnostics. And there's something very interesting in this ancient text. It opens the doors and windows to everyone, really speaking. There's a unique feature of this text. So it is not a strictly religious text. That's what makes Yoga Sutra so universal. It has got a relevance and importance that cross the boundaries of religion, culture, nationality, and so on. Now, in this sutra, Vyasa has some very important statements to make. So he says, Tatra sarva pranishu sukha sambhogapanneshu maitrim bhavayed. It's the first recommendation. I mean, you should practice a friendly, broad-minded, a friendly approach towards those who are practicing yoga but who may be very much involved in enjoyments, the normal things of life that normally attract people. Okay, but even in the context of enjoying the everyday experiences of life, your attitude towards people and towards events play a very important role on your own tranquility, whether you are able to live at peace with yourself, whether your mind is always in a state of peace and quietude. It depends upon how you interact with people. Because through this interaction, our mind gathers either good food or bad food. Bad food we call negativity in a very general term. Anything that obstructs, that creates obstacles, distractions as we mentioned in the earlier sutras, 30th and 31st sutras, we mentioned the 9 antarayas called distractions and their consequences, their results. Sahabhuva, as you called it, 31st sutra. So now, these negativities can be completely avoided if you approach your life and people around you in a proper manner. So this sarva pranishu sukha sambhoga panneshu, those who are also striving like you for acquiring things, this is competition, but still you should be friendly, you should not in any way experience any kind of jealousy or intolerance or hostile feelings. Maitri Bhava is Dukkhideshu Karunam. Those who are unfortunate, those suffering, you may not be able to help, still you should not have any feeling of contempt. This is a more straightforward commentary from Vyasa. In fact, in other commentators give this sutra a more of a deeper psychological and spiritual orientation. But Vyasa's commentary is very simple and very commonplace. So he says, don't look down upon those who are less fortunate than you, because when you look down upon somebody, they are not affected, but your mind collects what we may call unhealthy food, unhygienic food. And if you eat unhygienic food, you fall sick, body falls sick, mind also falls sick when you imbibe unhealthy psychological or mental food. We can easily understand this in modern context. Much of all the problems, what we call negativity, that we develop in our mind may be directly or indirectly linked to some dirty, filthy, unhygienic, psychological food that we have fed our own mind with. So the mind bites you back, hits you back somewhere else. Something that you give out to the world comes back to you from another direction we do not know. You can frequently find this happening in our life. You help a man today, he didn't expect any help from you. You help him today with all sincerity. He may not be grateful, but maybe after some time somebody may turn out and be grateful to you. You will expect a help, a helping hand, an assistance, some kind of deed of assistance or help from a totally unexpected person. Because you are already given it somewhere else, it's coming back to you. So also, the opposite also, unfortunately, is true. I mean, we do harm to somebody and maybe it comes back to you from another unexpected source. This happens. So, that's why Dukhideshu Karunam Punyatmakeshu Mudidam. Vyasa's commentary takes it in a very simple. He says, those who have accumulated more meritorious deeds, Punyatmaka means, those who have a lot of Punya karmas to their credits. So he may be spiritually more advanced. You should be able to be happy when another person is happy, not jealous. So this is an important thing. We should be happy when somebody else is happy. But there's an interesting dialogue in the huge classic Mahabharata. Vidura is a very profound discussion. I wish, in fact, before starting the class, I was referring to Mahabharata. That's why I'm 1 or 2 minutes late. It's a very profound, something struck me, it may be very important and relevant in the context of the sutra. Who is the real friend of yours? Normally, a friend in need is friend indeed. That is the definition. But Vidura takes a very different standpoint. Now, suppose you are poor and you have a friend who is rich. He helps you, maybe gives you money or whatever it is. Normally, he's a friend in need. You are in need of money and your friend provides you with something that you are in need of. He's your friend. And you are happy, he's also happy. Because he got a chance to help you with, of course. Vyasa says he may be a good friend, not necessarily. Why? Then he says, suppose one day you also work hard, get a good job, a high-paying job, and you may become as rich as the other person. So he finds that you are no longer in need of his help. He may be unhappy. He may be jealous because you have closed the gap. You are no longer in need of his help. He was very happy when he found you in need of his help. But when you found yourself to be as rich, maybe as happy as him, he may be slightly unhappy. So Vidura says, when you are happy, the other person should be happy. And he is your real friend. When you are unhappy, the other person may help you, but at heart he may feel, well, I got a chance to help this man with. So he enjoys being in a position to help you with something, and that gives him immense pride, joy and happiness. But the moment you have become as happy, maybe as rich as the other person, oh, this fellow has caught up with me. Now he's no longer in need of my help, and he may be slightly unhappy. So Vidura says, the real friend is one who is happy when you are happy. Not necessarily the person who will help you in times of need. He's your friend, no doubt, but he has got only second, he comes second in rank. The first rank should go to the person who is happy when you are happy. So that's why punyatmakeshu mutidam. So when you can be happy, when others are happy, you actually inherit the other person's quality. As I mentioned earlier last time, when we appreciate somebody, when we admire somebody for something, we inherit a part of what makes the other person so worthy of appreciation, and you are indirectly benefited. So Viduras, you can imagine some of the very profound dialogues. Mahabharata has got hundreds of dialogues. That's a very, just a statement from Vidura says, the one who is happy when you are happy is your real friend, not necessarily the one who is ready to help you when you are unhappy. He is certainly not your enemy, but he may not be the best friend. He may be enjoying your misery, and he may be enjoying his opportunity. He may be patting on his own back. He got a chance to help you with something. So maybe you can see, if you read Toynbee's study of history, Toynbee mentions the way these colonial powers conquered and impoverished many of the countries in Asian continent in the late 18th and the early 19th centuries. That's a different subject. Now again, apunyatmakeshu upeksham. Apunyatmakeshu upeksham. Upeksham means indifference. Keeping a long distance. You don't come in contact with a person whose association can psychologically pollute your own mind, because if you talk to people who are skeptical, cynical, who takes only a negative side of everything in this world, you may also contact a little bit of that problem, that illness. Just as flu and maybe coronavirus can infect, psychological maladies also can indirectly affect our mind. So you should not go very close to them, but you should not be hostile. You should not be too friendly. You should not be hostile, because hostility and friendliness both will bring two of you together. Then what do we do in our everyday life, in a workplace, in a university, maybe when you're traveling by plane, long discussions you may have with people. You may have many colleagues who may fall on the wrong side of Patanjali's equation, which is unfortunate. In that case, Patanjali will tell you later the Ekatattva Abhyasa and many other subjects are coming up in the later, Pratipaksha Bhavanam, many other subjects will come up. Patanjali recommends creating a kind of internal, subtle filtering mechanism that can leave out all negative influences. So you may be very friendly with everyone, but remember, you need not emulate that person when it comes to real life. So that will give us a kind of psychological filtering mechanism, a kind of armor plate that can protect us from negative influences. And then this is subject evam asya bhavayataha. This attitude, for one who has got this attitude, suklo dharma upajayati. Means suklo means sattva-guna. Sattva-guna means purity, cleanliness, clarity of mind, expressions, everything. Such version slowly he blocks all negativity coming from outside, from different contacts and influences. So what happens? He acquires more and more sattva gunas, purity and clarity of mind. Tatascha chittam prasidati. And in this manner, mind slowly becomes tranquil, inner tranquility, peace. And one point, the one prasannam ekagram sthitipadam labhade. This prasannam ekagram sthitipadam. See, these three terms are applicable to all the sutras from 33rd to 39th sutra. So you can find this Patanjali uses the word va, mean vikalpa, this or that, this. He goes on telling. You can find this here. For example, in the 33rd sutra, he of course he doesn't use the word va. In the next sutra, you find he says prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya, 34th sutra. Va means oh. Another method is recommended. We are going to discuss this elaborately later. 33rd sutra says, for acquiring this sthitipadam, ekagram, prasannam, sthitipadam, chittam. The prasannam, ekagram, chittam means a mind, chittam. We should remember, it's not just mind alone, but the whole world of our emotions and feelings and memories and what you call samskaras and vrittis, all these together create a mental world. So that is the real definition given to the word chittam by Vajaspati in his Tattwamayananda. This is a very important point. In the Yoga Bhashya Vartigam, Vijnana Bhikshu also agrees with this view. That means chittam here means entire mental world of emotions and feelings. So if you cannot, or if somebody cannot acquire this one-pointedness and inner tranquility by practicing Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, etc., then he can resort to Pranayama. That is Prachardana Vidharana. Prachardana means actually maybe Bastrika Pranayama. Some of the Pranayama experts maybe in our audience can throw additional light, which something which I am not. But Pranayama or the science of Pranayama must have evolved in the later centuries. During the later centuries, when the well-known books on Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and other Gheranda Samhita, all these books evolved, these concepts evolved. So if you cannot acquire mental tranquility by practicing these attitudes to different people, appropriate attitudes to different people, you can try to get it through pranayama. Of course, the commentators will tell you it prachardana and vidharana. Only exhalation, that is prachardana. Vamana means vomiting, but here means forcefully throwing the breath out, which is it's called rechaka. And retention, vidharana, that is Patanjali's view. But the commentators like Vajaspati especially mentions that it includes Puraga, Rechaka and also Kumbhaga, of course. That is Vidharana. Or still there is another method recommended in the coming sutras, that is Vishokava Jyotishmati, or this interior intelligence without any sorrow can be acquired by developing this kind of inner effulgence, inner tranquility and peace that can help a person to acquire, to obtain this tranquility and peace. Again, in the 37th sutra, Vitaraga Vishayam Vachittam, or another method, having for its object the mind of a person who is free from attachment. You think, meditate and contemplate on a person, his mind, his attitudes, his character. That can indirectly influence our mind. So you can imagine the opposite side. If children are fed with terrible food, watching thrillers, movies with inspire violence, instigate violence and terrible things, actually what is happening, their mind is being polluted and influenced, and their mind also loses its calmness and quietude. On the other hand, if one can think of the character, the inner personality of a sublime person who is himself an example of purity, integrity and calmness, then our mind also becomes calm and quiet. That's why you find in the traditional deities in Hinduism and also in Buddhism you find. I'm talking about the popular images of Buddhism. There are laughing Buddhas and smiling Buddhas. I'm talking about the normal stature of Buddha sitting quiet in Padmasana with eyes closed. That is a symbol of quietude, calmness and tranquility. So also you find in Hindu popular tradition, all these deities, gods and goddesses, and saints and sages are all portrayed sitting with eyes closed. Not eyes staring at something, but eyes closed. So why do we meditate, why do we contemplate on saints and sages, the holy persons, or persons who are considered to be holy by others? Because they manifested this tranquility and peace. That's a Vitaraga Vishayam Vachittam. Or by meditating, focusing on the mind of a person who is himself is free from all raga, dvesha, all the disturbing mental vibrations. 39th sutra is Yatha Abhimata Dhyanat Va, or meditating on any kind of any object that you like, that you revere, that you respect, very similar to the previous sutra. Something that you consider to be holy, a symbol of tranquility and peace. By meditating, by contemplating on that object, our mind can become calm and quiet. Similarly, the opposite also unfortunately is true. when we think on disturbing objects, persons and events, personalities whose character is certainly not a symbol of peace and happiness or tranquility, but rather of disturbance and violence, our mind also can become highly disturbed. So these are different methods recommended in these 7 sutras. Right from 33 to 39th sutras, you find Patanjali is giving different options for acquiring mental stability and peace and tranquility. Of course, we should remember these options are given after he recommends first Ishvara Pranidhana and then Ekatattva Abhyasa. The first recommendation is surrender to God, divine will. Resigning ourselves to a transcendental divine will. That is very powerful. Most of the commentators, they recommend this for the common people, especially those are not opposed to theistic ideas. They can very easily acquire this prasannam ekagram sthitipadam, this purified mind, tranquil and one-pointed mental system they can acquire through these methods. Now, one important subject, somebody in this video, they wrote in the comments, they said something, I saw this morning. They said something about the dark night of the soul. Now, I'm not giving my view on what it is from a purely psychological point of view, but the term is very popular in the Roman Catholic tradition. It means a kind of spiritual crisis. Spiritually becomes kind of existential crisis when a devotee, after traveling some distance, feels completely lost, powerless. He feels a failure, and he suddenly feels that he's not able to make any more progress. Now, this dark night of the soul can be understood in the light of the 30th and 31st sutras, dealing with antarayas and dealing with that is distractions, and of course their consequences. That is what do you call these distractions, consequences, with that they call vikshepa sahabhuva. So you find vyadhi, sthana, samshaya, pramada, alasya, avirati, bhrandi darsana, alabdha bhumigatvam, then anavasthitatvam, chitta vikshepaha antarayaha. These are the 9 distractions, plus pain, despair, shakiness, inspiration and expiration. That is dukkha daulmanasya angamejayatva swasa praswasaha vikshepa sahabhuvaha. So these 13 experiences, unfortunate experiences, together constitute what Christian mystical tradition calls the dark night of the soul. Of course, in the traditional mystical writing, you find the whole thing is blamed to Satan or the devil. I am not dealing with that subject. Patanjali takes a very, very rational, very psychological view. He says the disease, mental and physical disease, and then indecision, lack of shraddha, carelessness, laziness, then raga, desire for sensual objects, then kind of mistaken notion, kind of delusions and illusions, wrong thoughts, and then not being able to reach the point, being totally unstable, and then all other related problems can be called the dark night of the soul. These are all due to the conflict of samskaras. when we are entering spiritual life, actually what is happening is we are on the one hand we are confronting the samskaras which are already accumulated in our mental system, which may not be conducive to spirituality or spiritual practices. So when we are trying to acquire new samskaras, spiritual samskaras through spiritual practices, there is a confrontation taking place in the mental world. That means these two samskaras, the negative samskaras which may be already there in the mental system, and the positive spiritual samskaras that you are trying to generate through meditation, through other rituals. So what is happening is there is a clash of civilizations, as you may call, clash of samskaras, which constitute all these 9 distractions and their consequences. So that is the only answer we can think of at this point, because Patanjali becomes very close to the view of the teacher of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, in this matter. Can you ever imagine life to be always pleasant and happy and without any obstacles? Frequently people enter spiritual life thinking that it is an answer, it is a solution to the problems of the world. We should not approach spirituality as a solution to the problems of the world. Rather, spirituality helps us to look at the problems in this world from a different angle, so that we start realizing the fact that we are not shocked, we should not be surprised at the way this world is functioning. So God should not be called to fix your problems. You may call a plumber, an electrician, maybe a what you call cleaning guy, as they call it, to get certain work done. So if you approach spirituality with that perspective, you are going to be disappointed. Spirituality teaches us to look upon the world, our life, and all the problems around from a different angle, from a different perspective. Doing our duty properly, still we will be able to look at our work, our life, at everyone around us from a different perspective. That new perspective, the spiritual perspective, helps us to expect these things from this world, because the world can never be perfect. Otherwise, you can imagine, of course, this is a different, interesting subject. Dostoevsky tried to portray a character, a perfect, good human being, a Christ-like character, The Idiot, that's a famous book, one of his classics actually, the work that he liked most. Prince Minsky. This man is humble, simple, truthful, and innocent, gullible, and so he was called an idiot by people all around him. But really speaking, of course, that was his purpose. He wanted to create a Christ-like picture. So many commentators, many critics should it's a failed Christ, Prince Minsky. Because the work, the well-known classic, begins with his return from the asylum and it ends with his return again back to asylum. So practically it was a failed experiment. It would be like a caricature. It would be like such a person cannot live. Can anyone live in this world is humble, simple, gullible? Gullibility is natural for any person who is simple to that extent. Innocent, believing everyone, taking everyone at his word, at her word, thinking that everyone in this world is good, the whole world is wonderful, everyone is compassionate. No, that is not the world in which we are living. So, true spirituality, on the one hand, will help us to grow spiritually. At the same time, it will help us to take a very, very balanced way of looking at the world. I mean, a strong outlook based on sturdy common sense, the raw common sense with a spiritual orientation. It's not the common sense of a businessman. It should be common sense of a spiritual person. I mean, you do your best, but don't be gullible enough to think that everyone in this world is like a Christ or a Buddha. It cannot be. It is not. That's why Patanjali took all these pains. He said you should be friendly towards people like yourself. You should be compassionate towards people who are maybe unfortunate. And you should be able to admire those who are spiritually more advanced. And you should also have the common sense, a sturdy, strong common sense, to keep a long distance from persons whose association can be poison to you. Prince Minskin, he associated with all kinds of, unfortunate characters. And he ended up in the asylum from where he came. So, that's why spirituality provides a kind of sturdy common sense based on spirituality. Not give and take policy of trade and commerce, but on spirituality. I mean, the idea that we should try our best in our action, in our word, in our thought. We should be spiritual. We should do our best to be helpful to others. And when we find ourselves close to being entrapped, then we should use our common sense to keep ourselves away from that. That's why upeksha mentioned here. Upeksha. Okay, now we will come to this important subject. Of course, we already discussed this here, 32nd we discussed, now 33rd or 34th. This is already with the Prachardana Vidharanabhyam Va Pranasya. That is the sutra, that is 34th, which actually discusses pranayama. The elaborate techniques of pranayama, which the later Hatha Yoga experts developed that you find in the Gheranta Samhita, Hatha Yoga Pratipika, etc. They are not directly referred to in the Patanjali's book, but commentators like this Vijnana Bhikshu, who wrote Yoga Bhashya Vartigam, he makes certain important points which are not made clear in the text itself. For example, he says, Nasika Pudabhyam iti. So he says exhalation, prachardhanam. Ekadara Putena ityarthaha prayatna visheshaditi. So something very interesting. So why should Patanjali mention this? You should breathe like this, and then prachardhana can imply forced exhalation, breathing out, which involves an additional force. So the Vijnana Bhikshu says, Prayatna Visheshat iti. So that it means there should be an effort. Normally we all breathe and we don't make any special effort to breathe. It's a natural spontaneous action going on mechanically. Now if you turn this breathing in and breathing out, and of course retention, that is not really part of the breathing, normal breathing practice. When you do this with some kind of a effort, that can influence the mind. Why? Because if you look at the 32nd sutra, Patanjali gives a hint. Dukkha daumanasya angame jayatvam swasa praswasaha vikshepa sahabhuvaka. So the consequences, the results of distractions. are mentioned. And one of them is this kind of expiration and inspiration. Swasa praswasa. Swasa means inspiration and expiration. And they are mentioned as a problem, as one of the serious consequences of the 9 distractions. When you mentally, physically get sick, when you have a wrong notion, Bhranti Darsana, when you feel you are lost, when you feel, when you have all kinds of delusions, you go on meditating, you may be actually progressing, but you feel you are not progressing at all. There are some people who will tell you, I am lost, I am so terrible, I am such a complete, I am completely lost. You can find such people, you don't like to talk to them actually. It's a big problem, really speaking. Now, along with this, the breathing system also can be disturbed. That's a problem. So, if you are disturbed mentally and if that creates breathing problems, that makes your breathing irregular, then by regulating your breathing system, you can acquire tranquility and peace. If irregularity of breathing is an indication of a problem, then by regularization, by making your breathing system regular, you can acquire the opposite result. What's the opposite result of distraction? Egagram prasannam sthitipadam. That means mental stability, peace and tranquility. So, that's why Patanjali devised this unique mechanism. Of course, he says, that's a prayatna visheshadidi, sukshma rupena yoga shastrokta ritya. So, as mentioned in the Yoga Shastra, maybe when Patanjali wrote these sutras, maybe the well-known books on Hatha Yoga that we read today were not written. They came much later. But still, there must have been a practice of these disciplines in ancient times, which were only later recorded in the form of a book in other books on Hatha Yoga. Vamanam Rejanam Ityarthaga means vomiting. Vomiting means actually prayatna vishesha is there, means special effort. You have to make artificial effort. So it could be some sort of a breathing exercise involving forced exhalation. Vidharanam kumbhagam tacharthat puranantaram iti bodhyam rechanottaram puranam vina vidharana asambhavad. So here Vijnana Bhikshu says vidharana means retention, kumbhagam. That means puranantaram. After breathing in, one should practice anta kumbhaga, retaining the breath within. And so that's mentioned in the bodhyam, why rejanottaram puranam vina vidharana sambhavad. After breathing out, you cannot retain the breath without breathing in. So these are some important observations by Vijnana Bhikshu. But he makes clear that though Patanjali doesn't mention clearly, it involves both, that is both Puraga, Rechaga, and also of course Kumbhaga. Kumbhaga is mentioned, Rechaga is mentioned, Puraga is not mentioned as Sutra, Puraga is implied, that's the idea behind. Okay, now we will go to, of course, there is sloka here. Dve bije chitta vrikshasya pranaspandana vasane egasmin chatayo kshine kshipran dve abhinasyataha prana nirodhe indriya vritti sa nirodhe prana vritti nirodha. So, if we can regulate prana, if we can get established in the harmony of prana, then we will be able to get established in this tranquility and peace. Another option comes in the 35th Sutra. Vishevadi va pravrittihi utpanna manasasthiti nibandhini. That's the meaning here. Vishevadi va pravrittihi. So, of course, it means here, Vishayavati pravritti means this kind of Va Vishoka Jyotishmadi pravritti utpanna manasa sthiti nibanthini means here. It means when extrasensory perception arises, it becomes cause of this prasannam, chittam, sthitipadam, ekagram, etc. What Vyasa says earlier. Then becomes the cause of one-pointedness and tranquility of mind. When this Vishayavati pravritti arises, then it becomes a cause of manasaka sthiti nibanthini. It becomes the cause of tranquility, peace, and stability of mind. Now we can have interaction. We have got about a lot of time. Most welcome.
Hari Om Maharaj.
Hari Om.
Maharaj, one thing you mentioned today is when talking about spirituality, you said God is not to be called to solve your problems.
Yeah.
And spirituality is not a trade, right? But the vast majority, when they take their first step into spirituality, they do take it in this context. So is it so this trade kind of mindset, is it a stepping stone in the right direction, or is it something that has to be avoided?
Absolutely. It's a stepping stone in the right direction. That's why Gita, Bhagavad Gita, which is a much more important book as a spiritual classic, says, Arto jitnyasu artharthi jnani cha bharadashava. So, Lord Krishna divides spiritual seekers into 4 categories. Artaha, jitnyasu, artharthi, jnani. Artha means somebody who is sick, maybe poor, has a problem. He prays to God. That's another thing. Jitnyasu, out of curiosity, inquisitiveness. You may go to a library, read him, everything like that. Artharthi means you have something to, some desire to be fulfilled. People pray to go to temples and places of worship, then pray to God for different desired objects. Jnani, those who have the highest, those who have really understood, the real essence of spirituality. Now, Shankaracharya in his commentary says, of course, in the next, Udara Sarvaivaide, that is next verse in Gita, and Shankaracharya Udara means Utkrishta Chitta Hede Sarve, means all of them, including those who pray to God for getting a job, for a rise in salary, better job. They are also Utkrishta Chitta. They are also noble-minded, noble-hearted. Because instead of turning into something else, they are turning their attention. They are taking refuge in a higher spiritual ideal. So, because once you enter the spiritual world, spiritual life, as an artha, one day, maybe not in this life, maybe after several life cycles, you will eventually end up reaching the status of jnani. That's the important thing. Now, Ramanuja's commentary, mostly you find Vedanta Desi and others, they refer to this, say, how this happens. And there's a very psychological explanation you find. Suppose you have a problem that you want to get solved, and you pray to God, and you find your prayers are answered. And actually you are doing puja, you're doing worship, you're doing spiritual practices with a strong desire till now. Now your prayers are answered. Out of gratitude, you find your sattva, your devotion increases. Because I really found the door is opened. I knocked at the door, it's opened. So out of a sense of gratitude, the devotee will continue his spiritual practices without selfish motive in mind. So it's a gradual and inevitable evolution, an ascent that happens in your spiritual life. This is a common thing. Many people turn to higher spiritual ideals and they have a problem. But gradually they evolve. There are very few, oh, I got my problem fixed. Now I don't have to keep the plumber in my home or electrician. Yes, he can go back to his office. We don't treat God that way. The beginning we may have thought of some kind of practical utility at the beginning of spirituality. So eventually there's a gradual and inevitable evolution that takes place in our spiritual life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
From Sutra 33 to 39, there are 7 methods listed. Are those exhaustive list, or are they just examples of more things that are not mentioned?
Yeah, and then said up to 39 is the warm all, its meaning is mentioned different options for acquiring one-pointedness and tranquility of mind. So we will take up gradually. We'll take up in the coming sessions. I didn't want to. I wanted to club them together as one unit. That's why I didn't go deeper in the 34, 35, 36, 37, 38 and 39. After that another subject begins. So we will discuss that in the coming classes. Yeah, they are all different options. Just like Ishvara Pranidhana. That's also one means. Ishvara Pranidhana Dva mentioned. Also from where it begins, And then, of course, there is a Ekatattva Abhyasa is also mentioned. So, in the previous sutras, if you can surrender to God, divine will, or if you can direct all your energies and actions in one direction, these are all different options mentioned. So, after that, there's again some other subjects come up. From 34th onwards up to 39th, it is continuous discussion of different options of practices for acquiring one-pointedness and prasanna megagram sthiti padam. Vyasa's commentary comes like that, to acquire that inner mental one-pointedness, tranquility, peace and inner fulfillment. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yeah, namaskar.
Swamiji, my name is Kumar, joining in from Vijayawada, India. Today is my first day and joining the session, Swamiji. I'm trying to play a catch-up game. I have come up to your previous sessions up to 12th or 14th, I think, yeah. Swamiji, I have a question relevant and pertaining to your previous sessions. May I pose that question here, Swami?
Yeah, you can, please.
Thank you, Swami. Swami, my question pertains to the Atma. Based on the samskara vritti, chitta vrittis and samskaras which have been accumulated in the Atma, once it gets freedom from the body and the samskaras have not got exhausted, the Atma would realize itself into another body. So my question here, Swami, is, does the Atma have its own choice to seek a body, or is there a higher being which directs the Atma to go into a certain body for the next life?
Yeah, there is a concordance. According to Shastras, the science of transmigration is discussed elaborately in the Upanishads in Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya. Also, Brahma Sutra has got some very important sutras, Shankaracharya Sutra. So, first of all, when we live our present life, we acquire a lot of samskaras and vrittis and tendencies, and that's actually those tendencies, samskaras and vrittis, again they will be influenced by the previous life cycle samskaras. They together constitute what we normally call Sukshma Sharira. Sukshma Sharira means Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, Pancha, Pranas and Mana Buddhi. Of course, there is a different way of much more comprehensive interpretation is called Puryastakam in the Viveka Chudamani. So it's a huge conglomerate of things. In a way it contains Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Hangara, Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, Pancha Prana, Pancha Mahabhuta, everything. Anyway, so the point is, they together constitute what we call the Sukshma Sarira, or internal organs we call it. Now, this Sukshma Sarira, it retains all the samskaras, everything, even when we die, when we migrate to another life. So, based on the status of these, the condition of the Sukshma Sarira, I mean, which of course includes all samskaras and vasanas and vrittis, our next life will be there. That's why there is a continuity, but there is discontinuity when it comes to body, but there is continuity when it comes to the samskaras and vasanas and vrittis. So, now, going beyond this, in the Upanishad, Shankaracharya's commentaries and the sub-commentaries, Vartika, Brihadaranya, Vartika, Sureshwara, Vartika, you find your next life depends upon your choosing of your family, your next life. Everything depends upon what you have acquired in this life in terms of samskaras and vasanas and vrittis. But your parents also will have their own samskaras and vasanas and samskaras. So, through good samskaras, through auspicious samskaras, if they deserve a good person to be born in their family as their son, so there's a concordance, mutual concordance actually. Mutual interrelatedness or interconnectedness is there. That's why there is this continuity. But we don't feel it because we see things in isolation. So Patanjali's system doesn't give a very elaborate or complete or comprehensive interpretation or outlook on these matters. But there are just a few sutras where Patanjali talks about practicing samyama on the samskaras, which will help us to give an idea of the previous life, previous life. Just a hint that we already discussed earlier, that will be coming again. So, but in the Upanishads, and of course Shankaracharya's commentaries, Shankaracharya gives a very logical explanation of these statements found in the Upanishad literature. So, you feel at home in certain places while doing certain things, while meeting certain people in this life. This can change from one stage to another stage. But you feel a kind of interconnectedness, internally connected to a place or an idea or a work or certain samskaras. That's because you are connecting with your own past samskaras. That's why you feel harmony. When you don't have that, we don't feel the connection, there will be disharmony, this conflict, discord. So, what we are naturally, spontaneously interested in, art, literature, music, or human beings, work, or whatever it is, those things must be already there in the subtle form of samskara, somewhere in the deeper layers of the mental system, which is called chitta.
Thank you very much. Atma science is far beyond artificial intelligence, Swami. Thank you very much, Swami.
Are you in any way connected with artificial intelligence by professional?
To a certain extent, Swami, but I'm taking it easy in life now.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Maharaj,
yeah.
The web host has asked me to ask this question from YouTube.
Yeah.
and it relates to a question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So I'll combine them.
Yeah.
A question from YouTube.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear. Okay,
Very
please,
good.
please continue.
Sutra 33 says,
Yeah.
keep upeksha from non-religious apunya people. If one's spouse and family members are antagonistic to the religious practice, what to do? And my question is related to this expanding on the concept of upeksha, because I think it gets expanded on in the Buddhist literature mostly, and for those of us who want to dive deeper into all the varieties of upeksha, I'd like some direction.
Yeah, you can find, of course, Buddhist commentators may try to interpret it from a purely what you call secular perspective, which is perfectly okay. Patanjali will agree with that. So apunya here doesn't necessarily mean anything which has to do with religion. A person whose association can create conflict in our mind. It could be cynical ideas that can influence our mind when you talk to certain persons, or those persons through their contact with us can shake our own convictions. Actually, when we follow certain disciplines, we have some convictions. If others shake that conviction, then it will be harmful to us. Again, this is a recommendation given for a beginner, a seeker. It is not the approach for a highly evolved person. It is for the seeker. See, as I mentioned this last session, Sri Ramakrishna says, when it is a tiny plant, then you have to erect a fence around, because otherwise it will be eaten away by cattle or goats. But so when you are in the initial stages of a spiritual evolution, it's very important that we should try to reinforce our own conviction. We should be, as far as possible, free from conflicting circumstances. And certain people's association can create conflicts in our mind because we are only beginners. When we are fully established, it's okay. See, Buddha could transform Angulimala. But if a normal person had gone to Angulimala, he would have lost his fingers, as the story goes, Angulimala, his main hobby was to catch hold of people and cut off their fingers and made a garland of it. He got the name Angulimala. Buddha was going in that direction. So other Buddhist monks warned him, don't go in that direction. Buddha didn't bother and he went. But Buddha looked at this man was transformed. Now, that's okay. But a normal, ordinary Buddhist monk would not be able to do that. He'll lose his fingers, really speak, and in life also. So, similarly, at the beginning of a spiritual life, we should try to create a kind of inner filtering mechanism. How do we do that? Well, I should be careful when I associate with people who may not be good friends, because they may try to take away my conviction, may disturb my conviction. It has nothing at all to do with the religion or God. That should be understood very clearly. In fact, this is an advice that every caring mother or father should give to his or to her child when she goes to school. They do that indirectly, of course, without the slogan. It's a normal, simple, common sense. At the same time, we should be friendly with those who are like us. We should admire, appreciate those who are ahead of us, and we should be compassionate towards us. But the point is, there may be people, there may be good people, but their convictions will be different, their views will be different, and we are just beginners. So when we confront them, when we are in exchange of ideas, perhaps because we are still beginners, our views may be disturbed, and that would be harmful to our spiritual life. So it has nothing at all to do with the religion or God or anything like that. That's why all the 195 sutras can have a very, very secular, I mean, in the sense, I'm not talking in its derogatory sense, I mean, very rational interpretation, not necessarily in the light of religion or any faith systems. Of course, those who have a strong sense of faith and sanctity, they find it much more easy to understand and practice. That's all.
And thank you, Swamiji. But I do think I do think that the questioner is facing that householder dilemma of disparities of spiritual interest amongst the members of the family. But that's so commonplace.
It's common everywhere.
It's common everywhere. In fact, it's hard to imagine a family where somebody wouldn't be more interested than other family members, and maybe has to apply that spiritual filter that you described as they pursue their interests.
Yeah, you are right. And religion has come to mean many things, sometimes many unpleasant things in modern times. So very often people are afraid to be seen, to be associated with any religious faith system, unfortunately today. So there's a subject beyond the scope of our discussion. So the main point is this verse, the punya, apunya, these are terms used in the traditional Hindu Sanskrit text in association with certain religious. Punya karma means auspicious activities. It means some activity that's good, that will produce some auspicious result. That is punya. And the opposite is apunya. That's all. Apunya means those opposite of it.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.
Swamiji, namaskar.
Namaskar.
I had a general question, not pertaining particularly to today's class.
Yeah.
When we talk of the term samyama, I understand it as a kind of intuitive concentration.
Yeah.
Is that what it means, or am I?
In the Patanjali system, samyama means dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. These are the 6th, 7th, and 8th of the Ashtangas. So, in the normal terms, samyama could, in Vedanta, samyama means restraining, self-control, all that mean. But in the context of Patanjali system, when we talk about doing samyama on samskara sakshakara, so that mean by doing concentrated meditation on our own samskaras, we observe our own samskaras, the workings of our inner mind, what are the impulses and tendencies, and how they influence our actions. So if we are today, because of our previous samskaras, previous activities, then if we can make a rational analysis through proper concentration, make a rational analysis through observation and concentration, then we get an idea what must have been our actions, what kind of life we must have been living in the previous life cycles to acquire the present status of samskaras and tendencies. Of course, the samyama is not just a normal concentration, it's possible for those who have advanced farther beyond that. So that's the idea mentioned here. Just like, suppose you think of a lake, different layers. But many of the layers on the surface, like dust and filth, all kinds of layers are there. Once you remove all of them, you can see clearly. You can see rock bottom of the lake with clarity. You can perceive the rock bottom. But if you don't remove all these layers, outer layers on the surface, you won't be able to see the rock bottom. So through samyama, we are trying to see through all these multiple layers of our own samskaras, which actually normally obscure our vision of or a memory of our own previous life cycles. That's the idea behind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you for those questions. It helped me to discuss certain points that I might have left out during the lecture. Thank you. Most welcome. Namaskar. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Recording stopped.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Pranam Swami.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you.